My name is Anna Brooks, and the worst day of my life wasn't the day my father died. It was the day of his funeral. I stood outside the church wearing a black dress, holding a single white rose that my father used to buy for my mother every anniversary. I took one step toward the entrance, and two security guards blocked my path. Before I could ask what was happening, my older sister, Melissa, walked down the church steps with a cold smile. She looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Dad didn't want you at his funeral." I felt like the ground disappeared beneath me. For a second I couldn't breathe. I stared at her, waiting for her to laugh, to tell me it was some horrible misunderstanding. She never did. Instead, she nodded toward the guards. "If she tries to come inside, remove her." People standing outside the church turned to look at me. Some whispered. Some looked away. No one said a word. I held the white rose tighter until the thorns cut into my hand, but I didn't feel the pain. The only thing I felt was betrayal. My father wasn't just my dad. He was my best friend. Even after my parents' divorce when I was 14, he never missed a birthday. Every Sunday morning without fail he'd call me. Sometimes we'd talk for 5 minutes. Sometimes for 2 hours. It didn't matter. He always made time for me. Melissa, on the other hand, barely called him. She always claimed she was too busy. Too busy with work. Too busy with vacations. Too busy with life. Yet strangely, the moment Dad became seriously ill, she suddenly had plenty of free time. She started visiting him almost every day. First, I thought she had finally changed. I wanted to believe she genuinely cared. Now, I know she cared about something else entirely. 3 months before Dad passed away, he was diagnosed with advanced heart failure. The doctors were honest. There wasn't much they could do. I took unpaid leave from work and spent every weekend at the hospital. Melissa was already there most days. She handled appointments, medication, paperwork. Dad often smiled and said, "I'm lucky to have both my daughters." Every time he said that, Melissa looked uncomfortable. I didn't understand why. Not then. One evening while Dad was asleep, I walked into the hallway to grab a coffee. As I returned, I heard Melissa talking on her phone. She didn't know I was standing around the corner. She whispered, "It won't matter after next month." A short pause. Then she laughed quietly. "No. Anna doesn't know anything." My heart skipped. Who was she talking about? What didn't I know? Before I could hear more, she ended the call. When she saw me, she smiled as if nothing had happened. A week later, Dad asked me something strange. He reached into his bedside drawer and handed me an old silver key. "If anything happens to me, give this to Mr. Collins, our lawyer." Dad nodded. "Promise me." I looked confused. "Why can't I just keep it?" He smiled weakly. "Because if you keep it, someone might try to take it." I laughed. "Who would do that?" Instead of answering, he simply squeezed my hand. That was the last real conversation we ever had. 2 weeks later, Dad passed away peacefully in his sleep. The funeral was arranged entirely by Melissa. She insisted on handling everything. She told me not to worry. She said she'd take care of all the details. I believed her. That was my mistake. The morning of the funeral, I arrived 30 minutes early. The parking lot was already full. Friends, neighbors, former coworkers, people my father had known for decades. As I walked toward the entrance, 2 security guards stepped in front of me. "I'm sorry, ma'am. You can't enter." I blinked. There must be a mistake. One guard looked uncomfortable. "We're following instructions." Before I could respond, Melissa appeared, wearing a black designer dress. Perfect makeup. Not a single tear. She folded her arms. "I told them you might cause a scene." I stared at her. "What are you talking about?" She stepped closer, then quietly whispered so only I could hear, "Dad changed his mind about you before he died." I felt sick. "You're lying." She smiled. "Can you prove it?" I tried walking past her. The guard stopped me again. Everyone inside the church was watching through the glass doors. I had never felt so humiliated in my life. With tears running down my face, I placed my white rose on the church steps, turned around, and walked away. I thought that was the end. I thought my sister had stolen my chance to say goodbye. I had no idea. Less than 24 hours later, a phone call from my father's lawyer would reveal a secret that Melissa never saw coming, and everything she had planned was about to fall apart. I spent that night sitting alone in my apartment. The white rose I had brought for my father was still lying on my kitchen table. I couldn't stop thinking about Melissa's words. Dad changed his mind about you before he died. Nothing about it made sense. Just 24 hours before he passed away, he had held my hand and whispered, "I'll always be proud of you." How could someone who said that suddenly decide he didn't want me at his funeral? I knew my father. He would never do that. Someone was lying. And deep down, I already knew who. The next morning my phone rang. The caller ID read, "James Collins, my father's attorney." I answered immediately. "Mr. Collins?" His voice sounded confused. "Anna, why weren't you at the funeral?" My heart sank. "You don't know." "Know what?" I told him everything. The security guards. Melissa. Being turned away in front of everyone. There was complete silence. Finally he spoke. "Anna, you need to come to my office. Today." An hour later I walked into his office. He looked genuinely upset. "I've represented your father for nearly 20 years. I can promise you one thing. He never instructed anyone to keep you away." Relief mixed with anger. I wasn't crazy. Melissa had lied. Then Mr. Collins opened a desk drawer and removed a small envelope. Across the front, written in my father's handwriting, were 5 words. "For Anna. Open only after my funeral." My hand started shaking. Inside the envelope was a flash drive. Mr. Collins plugged it into his computer. The screen faded in. There was my father, sitting in his favorite chair, wearing the same blue sweater he always wore on Sundays. He smiled. "Hi, sweetheart." The moment I heard his voice, I burst into tears. He looked directly into the camera. "If you're watching this, I'm probably gone. I know you're hurting, but there's something you need to know." He paused. Then his expression became serious. "If anyone tells you I didn't want you at my funeral, they're lying." I froze. Mr. Collins looked at me. Neither of us spoke. My father continued. "I've noticed Melissa becoming very interested in my money, my house, and my will. I hope I'm wrong. But if I'm not, I want you to know I planned for this." Mr. Collins paused the video. Then he placed another folder on the desk. "This is your father's final will." I opened it. Melissa had told everyone she was the executor. She wasn't. Mr. Collins was. She had also claimed Dad left everything to her. That wasn't true either. The estate was divided equally between both of us. Every single thing Melissa had said was a lie. That afternoon, Mr. Collins called Melissa and asked her to come to his office. She arrived smiling confidently. When she saw me sitting there, her smile disappeared. "What is she doing here?" Mr. Collins folded his hands. "I have a few questions." Melissa crossed her arms. "About what?" "Yesterday. Why was Anna removed from the funeral?" Melissa shrugged. "Because that's what Dad wanted." Mr. Collins didn't argue. He simply pressed play. My father's face appeared on the screen again. "If anyone tells you I didn't want Anna at my funeral, they're lying." Melissa's face turned completely white. She looked at the screen, then at me, then back at Mr. Collins. My father continued. "I love both my daughters. But love doesn't mean ignoring bad behavior. If Melissa is trying to control my estate, do not let her." The room became silent. Melissa couldn't even look at me. Finally she whispered, I was only trying to protect Dad's wishes." Mr. Collins calmly replied, "No, you were trying to control something that was never yours." She had no answer. A week later our family gathered again. Not for another funeral, but for a small memorial at my father's favorite lake. There were no security guards, no arguments, no lies. I stood beside the water, holding the same white rose I never got to place at his funeral. I gently laid it on the lake. As it floated away, I smiled through my tears. "I love you, Dad. And thank you for protecting me, even after you were gone." Melissa tried calling me several times over the following months. She apologized. She said grief had clouded her judgment. Maybe it had. Maybe it hadn't. But some betrayals change a relationship forever. I chose peace instead of anger, distance instead of drama. Looking back, I realized something important. The greatest inheritance my father left me wasn't his savings. It wasn't his house. It wasn't even his will. It was the truth. Because lies can fool people for a while. But the truth always finds its way into the light. And sometimes, the voice that protects you the most is the one you thought you'd never hear again.